everyone. Welcome to Lean In Olympia. My name is Meg Martin. I'm the Director of Integrative Services for Interfaith Works and one of your co-hosts of Lean In Olympia.
Hello, everybody. I'm Corey Passons. I'm the Director of Interfaith Relations with Interfaith Works. It's great to be here today.
Yes, so as you all know, if you're tuning in or if you're new, welcome. We're happy to have you here. Lean In Olympia is a monthly conversation that we have that posts on YouTube and Spotify and podcast form, other podcast platforms as well, that features conversations with me and Corey and a bunch of amazing different people in the community that are at the crossroads of justice, humanity, and belief. And we have had a ton of amazing guests, and we plan to have many, many more. And today we are super excited to present a candidate forum for the Olympia City Council race. And so we have two of our candidates for our first seating tonight, if you will. And we will have some other candidates in a second round as well, but we'll be putting it all out to the community with plenty of time for voting day.
Yeah. And thank you for being here and watching this with us. This is a space and a time for us to learn about the candidates, for you to share your platform, your ideas, your values of how to make our community a better place. And for our listeners and viewers to learn more about the pressing topics of the day in our region. And so we appreciate you very much for being here. And we were not able to have all of the candidates here for this forum, but we did offer them opportunities to submit written responses, and we'll give you an easy way to access those that'll be scaled to the length of time that we have with our candidates today. So look for that.
Yes. So each question will be stated, and then candidates will respond in a rotating sequence. And we've asked that each response be no more than 3 minutes in length. And we're going to hold up our little sign when you've got 20 seconds left. So with that, we'll get started. We will start with a 2-minute opening statement from each candidate. And Paul, would you like to start?
Sure. First, thank you, Megan and Corey, for having me here this evening. This is a real pleasure to be able to talk to the community about issues of homelessness that are so important. My name is Paul Berendt. I have lived in Olympia for about 40 years. We've been in our current home for 29 years. I raised my family here, my daughter's a graduate of Olympia High School. I want to essentially talk to your viewers about the things that I talk to people about at the door, which is that I really want to work on issues that are the tough issues in Olympia. And the number one tough issue in Olympia, as I see it, is our ongoing challenge of homelessness. And what I found that's been a real encouragement is that people have a tremendous empathy for the homeless, and they are really solutions oriented. One of the things I talk about is that I believe that we should establish perhaps 2 more tiny home villages. That I see the tiny homes as a means of really lifting people out of homelessness, and that there's tremendous support for the tiny home projects that are currently in our community, and that I see this as a means of real success for ending a lot of the camping that is going on in Olympia. I also talk about wanting to be a parks champion. Our parks are something that is a real wonderful legacy for our community. It is they are an environmental issue, an open space issue. And I talk about affordability and ideas related to housing on how we can make Olympia more affordable.
Justin.
Same question. As Paul stated, really grateful for the opportunity. It's wonderful to be able to be here, and so thank you so very much. My name is Justin Stang, and I'm running for the Olympia City Council in position 6. My wife and I have lived here in Olympia for 14 years. We started out as renters downtown, actually not far from here, in a teeny tiny apartment. And at that time, I was a musician and I worked at the front desk of the Franklin Street YMCA at the South Sound Y. I was the weekday morning opener. So 4:30 in the morning, I walked from my apartment on Legion Way to the Y and opened it up to get the community started for the day. We really struggled financially. My wife's a public school teacher, and at that time, playing music and teaching were really tough on us. And so I found work in the shellfish industry with the Hama Hama Company, and I worked my way up to a management position over the years on the leadership team. When I left, I had been managing the entirety of the wholesale and sales operations. My wife and I now live on the west side, and we own a home, and we have a small business. We actually own a second home and provide housing for another set of folks here in town. And I still work in the shellfish industry, but as a nonprofit policy analyst with the Pacific Coast Shellfish Growers Association. It's a very small nonprofit that represents roughly 100 family and tribal shellfish farms. I'm running for city council because I truly believe in the community of Olympia, not just the version that we see today or the one that I fell in love with, but I truly believe in the version that we can accomplish when we work together. And when I worked at the YMCA or at the oyster farm, or even now as I advocate for clean water, I've always worked to build something better for the people that are around me. And I'm running so that Olympia can remain a place where working families and small businesses can succeed. And that means for me that people have houses that they can afford, they have clean streets and parks, and of course they have a city budget that kind of reflects the priorities of the community. I have experience in collaboration and a longstanding commitment to workers, local jobs, and of course the environment. And I think that our best solutions come from working together and listening. And I'd be honored to earn the support of the Olympians that are watching. So thank you very much.
Thank you both. Move on to our next question. So Interfaith Works is one of the region's largest social service providers to people experiencing homelessness. We're also a coalition of around 30 faith communities of varying traditions and perspectives. And one of the ways that we connect to each other is through shared values. And I'm wondering if you could share with us some of the central values that bring you to this role and that guide you in decisions that you make and in civic leadership. And Justin will begin.
Yeah. As a candidate for council, my values that are always guiding me are integrity, collaboration, accountability, and my personal leadership philosophy, which is rooted in continual improvement, always better tomorrow. I believe that leadership for me means showing up and listening with respect and working as hard as you can alongside others so that we can find solutions that reflect the values of the community. I'm committed to equity. I'm committed to economic opportunity, and I'm committed to environmental responsibility. My experience in nonprofit advocacy and in small business, along with the shellfish industry, has taught me that the strong policies really come from real conversations and a willingness to keep learning. It's that continual improvement. I've spent my career bringing people together across those differences, and I believe that the public sector and public service should start with trust. We need to be honest about our challenges. We need to be transparent about our decisions, and we need to focus on doing better for all of the people that call Olympia home.
Thank you. One of the central themes of my campaign is that I'm a listener and a problem solver. And I believe good communications is the centerpiece of any ability to move the ball forward. And so these are core values that I hold. I am a liberal Democrat. And so when you talk about values, I think that that's really important that I just have liberal democratic values. And it's one of my inspirations for running, actually, is that I see in our national politics that I don't think that our community values are respected by our federal government right now. And so that was an inspiration for me to run. Regarding homelessness, I do want to say housing first is a personal value that I have. And that's one that I'll be bringing to the table should I be elected to the city council.
Yeah.
So one of our most forward-facing expressions in the community as an organization is our homeless services, as you may be aware. And there were 1,004 residents of Thurston County surveyed as experiencing homelessness in the 2025 annual point in time count. This survey is widely understood as a dramatic undercount of the actual number of people sleeping in doorways, wooded areas, and places without basic necessities for human survival. Additionally, there are over 2,450 people active on our coordinated entry waitlist for placement into shelters and available subsidized housing, which is all typically full in our area. We will have space for policy discussion more as we go on, but how do you feel about the current homelessness crisis and why? And Paul, we'll start with you.
You know, I kind of began this campaign feeling one way, and now that I'm into it fairly close to the election, that's evolved somewhat. I think I began thinking, I'm willing to really take this on, and I still am. But what has emerged, I think, is what I've heard from the community. And I am so encouraged by the fact that the community, I've doorbelled 7,000 doors in the community, and I over and over and over again hear pure empathy for the homeless and a desire to really support homeless programs and people rolling up their sleeves and getting something done. I was fearful what I would find was a fatigue about homelessness, but that hasn't been the case at all. I just believe that as a Judeo-Christian valued liberal society, we have got to look out for our fellow citizens who are less fortunate. These are tough challenges, but I believe that there are things that work, and that if we focus on providing the kind of services that really do work to move people into a better place, that we can make tremendous inroads. And that's what I want to do. The challenges are great. And in some ways, the challenges heading into the next year are going to be harder than ever. The big bill that was passed in Congress, reducing, largely eliminating Medicaid services for so many of our population, it's bound to impact the homeless community. And we don't know the answers of how we're going to deal with that just yet. But I'm dedicated to rolling up my sleeves and going to work on being able to do the best we can do.
Thanks. I think it's one of the most pressing and important challenges that's currently facing our city. I think it's really complex and it's something that needs quite a bit of urgency, but I also view it as a regional problem. This is something that Olympia alone is going to need help to really address it in a meaningful way. And so for me, involving Lacey, Tumwater, Yelm, Tenino, Grays Harbor, Mason County, and having everybody really row the boat the same direction is going to make for lasting impact. And I think part of that is to understand that because these challenges are so tough, that we really need to have the courage to say that I, Justin, personally don't know all of the answers, but I know that our community is full of really engaged, super smart people that have been working on this a long time, and we need to lean into their expertise and foster a collaborative environment that truly allows them to shine in their work, in the work that you all are doing every single day. And if we can build those partnerships and build those relationships and lean into that expertise, I think that although it's a complex and pressing challenge that requires urgency, I think we can continue to do the work in a way that's really beneficial for the community.
Thank you. Our next question is what do you see as the most effective actions? We're moving from this kind of a reaction and a personal reaction to the expressions of homelessness to what are the effective actions that the city is taking to decrease homelessness? What tangible improvements to the city's strategy to decrease homelessness would you take on as a city council member?
Yeah, and I'll expand a little bit about some of the things I just kind of touched on.
Yeah.
The City of Olympia has the one community plan, and they have the homeless response team, and I think that they've been effective in funding shelters and tiny home villages and funding addressing supporting services. They're also working to connect individuals that are outside with services and housing to get people shelter and get people help. I'd really like to see additional efforts put into accelerating some of the more urgent things. And for me, that's expanding access to emergency shelter, particularly low barrier shelters, so we can get the people that are out there inside and safe. And then, of course, more transitional housing and more permanent supportive housing, with part of that being increasing the availability of affordable housing supply. And I would like to see continued work in improving the continuity of case management and outreach. And certainly, I think one primary role that the city council can have is to advocate for funding, not only for the services that they're managing here in the city, but at the state and federal level, so that we can have a coordinated response and perhaps some more long-term stability there. The city itself acknowledges that these strong regional partnerships that I was talking about earlier are necessary for that one community plan to continue to have success or to be implemented successfully. And I'm committed to that work and want to emphasize the need for partnerships, ongoing partnerships with nonprofits, obviously with the county of Thurston County and the other cities and towns, and also our healthcare systems, because I think we're all working in a Venn diagram that overlaps, and we're going to need to lean into those partnerships to make sure we're all going the same way.
Thank you. In order to be truly effective at dealing with homeless issues, we have to be collaborative with the county. We have to be collaborative with the state, because so many of the so many dollars flow through our county government, and there are joint committees that make decisions. So collaboration is very critical. The city does provide. I think the city is stepping up to provide homeless intervention services and whatnot quite well. I love telling the story. I was up on Boulevard Road, and I knocked on a woman's door, and an 80-year-old woman answered the door, and I started to talk about homelessness to her, and she said, well, in that car right in front of her house, her son and his friend were living, and they were living in the car. And could I help her find some help for them? And so I went to the city, and I thought, well, what's going to happen when I go? Well, I hooked up with a guy named Joshua, who was a homeless intervention person. He went right up and interviewed the people living in the car and offered them shelter and some services. Hey, the shelters and the housing are all full, so it wasn't necessarily an answer to the solution. So being a housing first advocate, I have to ask myself, what is it that the city can do to move along more shelter, more housing? In order to really close down the camps, we have to have these options in order to really reduce the number of people sleeping out unhoused. These are the things we have to do. They're not easy. You got to cobble together the funds for a project. And this is the type of work I've done professionally on not on homeless issues, but on major infrastructure projects. I put together funding for sewers and freeway overpasses and berms in cities, and I see it as what we have to do in the city of Olympia. We have to decide on the needs for housing, for little houses, for traditional transitional housing, and we have to put together a strategy to cobble together the the funding, and we have to go out and get it. And it's not easy or simple. It doesn't happen overnight, but it is possible if we if we have a plan.
Homelessness and affordable housing are interrelated challenges. Please describe how you understand the relationship between homelessness and affordable housing, and name your goals and methods for expanded affordable housing in our region and city.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk about this. You know, when I first moved to Western Washington, I grew up in Eastern Washington. I lived in Seattle for a few years, and in those days, this was in the early 80s, there were hotels that people who were near homeless could stay in. You know, if people were addicted or alcoholic, they could stay in these hotels very inexpensively, and they weren't unhoused. They had very modest accommodations, but there were places to stay. Those places don't exist anymore. So this kind of informs my entire thinking about how do we deal with homeless people. We don't have modest transitional housing that's available. I believe the first thing that I want to do regarding this when I'm elected is I want to do an inventory of all the properties in the city that would be appropriate to build affordable housing units in. And if we and just so we know what resources are there, these would be city-owned properties or owned by some other public entity that maybe have been sitting there dormant for decades because they just are not being used for the purposes that they were intended for initially, or maybe they were tax properties that the city acquired. If we can identify those properties, again, I'm from the Frank Chop School of funding affordable housing through nonprofit organizations. If you have the property, say you could build a dozen units on it, you see if there's money through the Home Fund, through the Washington Housing Authority, through tax exempt abilities to raise money from tax exempt sources. And again, you cobble together the money needed to put together the project. When you reach a certain threshold, you can go to the bank and take out a loan for the rest, and you can make the project happen. This is what I think we need to do. It's not easy. It's not simple. I wish you could just write a check for, a couple $1 million for a big project, but it just is not the way it works. We have to find the land, and then we have to cobble together the funding to create the housing. And that is what I think we need to do.
I think that homelessness and housing and affordability are all directly connected. Here in Washington, we have a housing supply shortage. It's been estimated at roughly 1 million units short here in Washington, with 7,000 right now in Olympia, with that number being expected to grow as time goes on here. I think you couple that with the affordability crisis, and you leave a lot of people that are cost burdened. Housing is one of a family's largest expenses in their budget, and that's going to show up in sort of the homelessness crisis as we see it. So supply shortage, difficult affordability, and housing expense is certainly contributing to that factor. I think expanding affordable housing is not the only solution, but it's the most foundational step that we can take to prevent and reduce homelessness. If we had more supply, and that supply was at a dollar amount that people would not be cost burdened, then I think it would help reduce people from falling into the tough times, bad situations. So I think for me, in order to get to that spot, I'm really an advocate of increasing the housing supply at all types, at all price points. So I'm talking single resident occupancy all the way to single family home at a wide variety. Just yes, and every possible way that we can as a community add to the inventory in as quick of a fashion as we possibly can. Of course, within that, I'd like to prioritize deeply affordable units, workforce housing, or transitional options, so that first and foremost, we're taking care of the most vulnerable sets of our community. And I do think that in conjunction with that, we could add more permanent supportive housing that includes on-site mental health, addiction recovery, and case management services, because that is also going to give people the tools and the skill sets once they're in a more stable housing situation to remain in a stable housing situation. We need to continue to work with the state on infill and density neighborhood options. This looks like adding and encouraging accessory dwelling units in neighborhoods, small multifamily homes, duplexes, triplexes, things of that nature. And I think part of that is to look at and examine how the city does its permitting and its impact fees to make sure that if we are making meaningful strides in increasing our housing supply, that we're not sort of getting in our own way with additional burdens. Of course, I also want to advocate for some state law reform around co-ops and condominium ownership models, just so that we can also add to various options that people have for ownership.
Thank you. Police play a vital role in the culture of our city. What is the city currently doing in regards to policing that you are supportive of, and what would you like to see improved related to Olympia Police Department?
Thank you. I think Olympia Police Department, things that they're doing really well, the city and the police department has reimagined public safety, and they've discussed neighborhood policing. I think one of the best ways that we're seeing this show up is in the crisis response unit. I did a ride along with the Olympia Police Department, and I really asked the officers what they thought about it. And while at first they might have been a little bit unsure how it would kind of play out in real time, they've come to really embrace the program as effective. I talked to small business owners and to the neighborhood residents, and it seems like the program is working really well. The Olympia Police Department has invested in training and emphasized de-escalation tactics, which I think are phenomenal for our community. And they've added accountability in the form of body cameras and civilian oversight, which I think have gone a long way to build trust between the Olympia Police Department and the community. I'd like to see, I'd love to see an expanded options in that non-police intervention. So if crisis response is working, let's get them more hours, more staffing, more geographic outreach, and let's lean into a program that has had some proven success, so that we can continue to have unarmed responders for mental health or homeless or substance abuse issues, and that would reduce the burden on the Olympia Police Department, so that they could focus on other things that are important for our community. I would like to re-engage with the sheriff and the Thurston County Sheriff's Office on the narcotics task force, and I'm certainly not advocating for anything for low-level possession offenders, but I think if you zoomed out and you looked at the people that were trafficking narcotics to prey upon the vulnerable sets of our population, including our unhoused, then certainly I think that accountability there for those people that are bringing harm to our community is warranted. And I think that Olympia Police Department the city of Olympia used to provide resources for that sheriff's office task force, and I think it'd be great to re-engage in that. And then I'd also like to identify the Olympia Police Department's sort of demand and structures around the walking patrol here downtown. The taxpayers sort of have asked for the walking patrol. There was a tax increase for public safety that's dedicated towards it. But if, for example, the walking patrol is doing a 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. and we find out that the really busy times don't fit into when they're currently doing that walking patrol, then I'd like to advocate for analyzing when the busiest times are and adjusting accordingly, so that we can have the most beneficial impact for the community.
Thank you. Justin touched upon many of the reforms that have transpired, which I think have really strengthened our police department, and I support. I too have looked closely. I support the police. I think the police are. I think we have a good police department in the city of Olympia, by and large. One of the things that I've learned is that that it's been very difficult to recruit people in to be police officers. I'd like to see a greater emphasis on recruitment into the police force. It's been very difficult for them to fill the vacant positions. And I actually just last night watched a presentation before the City Council subcommittee on public safety and livability, in which they are down, our force is down about 20 officers, and others are on paid leave, family medical leave, and so on. And so the force is short-staffed. And one of the things that came out in this meeting is that they are going to have to reduce the walking patrol, which is a very popular program in downtown Olympia. And so as a council member, I really want to advocate for those walking patrols to be maintained and expanded. The thing that I hear about, honestly, in the community, in my doorbelling, is honestly safety on just the streets. It's speeding on the streets. People would like to see a greater police presence in the neighborhood, just to get people to slow down on the streets themselves. I know this isn't exactly kind of what you're asking, but this seems to be the number one issue that I hear from citizens of Olympia is too much speeding on the street. And so that is something that I would like to see the police concentrate more on, frankly, is just the safety of getting cars to slow down. And, we had this terrible instance where a couple of women were killed in downtown Olympia in a traffic accident, and I just wondered how much speed on the street had to play in that instance.
Interfaith Works is a coalition of diverse faith communities who work together for social justice, peace, and relationship building. We recognize the important role that faith communities play in our society. Describe how you would recognize and engage with the various religious and spiritual communities and traditions in our region. Oh.
Thank you. Our faith communities have been core to so much of the delivery of voluntary social services in our community. One of the first volunteer jobs that I ever had in the city of Olympia was working at Bread and Roses, which I don't think Bread and Roses exists the same as it did, but it provided meals for people in the community. It wasn't just the homeless; it was anyone could come and have a meal. At the time that I volunteered, the faith communities have provided a critical amount of shelter, particularly in the wintertime. I know that the St. Mike's Church has provided shelter for folks in the wintertime, and over again we see faith communities stepping up. The church on Boulevard Road, I'm not sure if it's Methodist or Presbyterian, providing a tiny home community of a number of homes there. I think to address any of the social issues related to poverty and the unhoused, no one is closer to the community than our faith communities are, and so it's incumbent upon us to coordinate and work well with them. There is a separation between church and state, and so as a city, we have to recognize that fine line. But a wholesome communication and interaction is really key for a strong community.
The religious and spiritual communities are such an important part of Olympia's service community. I think, as mentioned, they are at the forefront and have been for addressing issues related to housing, related to hunger, related to mental health. And I believe that these communities, they deserve recognition and certainly a seat at the table. I think that what makes Olympia special is that we all have very different backgrounds. I grew up as a Protestant. I went to Catholic school where I studied Judaism, and now I study Buddhism. And I think it's the role of the local government to really foster an environment where, in the spirit of inclusion, that we're inviting people to work alongside and serve with one another. I think that for me that shows up in three things really, which is like to show up for your community, which means go attend community events and become involved and active in the community, to really listen to the community, to the spiritual and religious community, and of course to show them respect and value and appreciate and understand what it is that they're trying to convey through their service work. I would like to build and strengthen relationships with our local religious leaders, and I want to be available to attend those community events and to listen.
%16.8% of the U.S. population over the age of 12, or about 48.4 million people, met the criteria for a substance use disorder, and 23.4% of adults over the age of 18, or about 61.5 million people, experienced a mental illness, with about 5.6% reporting serious mental illness. So clearly, our country is facing a mental health crisis that includes significant struggles with addiction. How do you see mental health and addiction impacting our community? And what steps would you take as a council person to support all people who need access to mental health resources in our community? Thurston.
Thanks, Meg. Mental health and addiction challenges touch nearly every part of our community, from public safety to housing, family stability, and economic opportunity. And I think a lot of people are really struggling to access care. When we talk about housing, homelessness, mental health, addiction, all of these things are complex problems that are all very intertwined. And so I'd like to work with the county and other regional partners to strengthen the city's partnership with health providers, behavioral health providers, with community-based organizations, and with our first responders. I want to expand access through mobile crisis teams and non-police models like the crisis response unit that we were talking about earlier. Because they're so interrelated, the housing and homelessness issues and the mental health and substance abuse issues, I think that we need to bring that same sense of urgency to how we are addressing mental health and addiction services as we are to how we're working on homelessness and housing challenges. So I think it's definitely one of those things that it's certainly here, and coming up with simpler ways so that people can access the care that they need as fast as they possibly can is a fantastic way forward.
Thank you. I think we need to constantly examine how we can do a better job in delivering behavioral health services in our community to everyone, but it's especially impactful to the homeless community. It's very disturbing to me that we don't have a detox center in Thurston County where, people who want help, they want to, get off drugs and get sober. If they have no resources, it's very difficult for them to take that first step. I believe that all of the providers are really drinking out of a fire hose in Thurston County, that there are tremendous challenges. And so I'm not a critic of the providers, but I do think we can do a better job. And I would like to examine a model where it's behavioral health is really kind of a one-stop shop in the community, that we could have detox mental health beds, counseling services, and even transitional housing under one roof. The capital expenditure would be considerable, but I think the ongoing costs wouldn't be any more than we currently have because those services are all being provided. So I'd like to explore some other models. I am a big fan of Compass Health in Everett that has a model like this. It's expensive to build a facility along those lines, but if we're really going to deliver services to people and help them get their lives together, I think we should explore a model that has all behavioral health services under one roof.
Climate change is a present reality in our region. What is your assessment of climate mitigation and preparation strategies the city should prioritize? Oh, sorry, did I lose my track?
Yeah, okay. No, I'm happy to go first. I'm Paul. I don't know. This question in relation to homeless, I kind of toyed with this. I think about this issue a lot because I think that under the current national administration, a lot of the momentum for climate mitigation is kind of slowed down, and I think we have to double down on this. I believe that the best thing we can do to reduce carbon emissions in the city of Olympia and meet the goals of our Thurston County Climate Mitigation Plan is to concentrate on transportation and encourage a more bikeable, walkable, and public transit city. I believe that we have a gem in our community in that we have free public transit. And this is a tremendous benefit to particularly the low income and financially distressed people who can get around for free. And I will be a councilman that really goes to bat to maintain those free services. So in my view, they're kind of two things. It's transportation, having more trails that make us more walkable, bikeable, free public transit, and there's just kind of a personal interest I have in promoting stronger carbon reduction programs, and that is that I think we need to take a close look at our recycling projects. A lot of people aren't aware that many of the things that we put in our recycling bins end up in landfills, and I would like to double down on making sure that those things that we are recycling are in fact recycled.
I think that climate change is already impacting our community. A couple of years ago, we saw king tide floods with salt water over the roadway, not far from where we're sitting today. And so we need to do two things first and foremost, which is to balance our mitigation for what's happening currently with also our planning for adapting in the future. One of the things that makes me really optimistic about being here in the city of Olympia is that we really have a strong framework, and we have really committed, excellent city staff that's already working on this. So I think we need to continue that work, especially as we're moving forward to meet these climate goals. We're behind currently, but I think we can get to where those goals are set. And for me personally, climate change and the environment are a lens with which I filter all public policy. So anything that's going to be a policy for the city of Olympia in my world is going to look at how that policy is going to affect current climate change that we're feeling, and how is it going to impact the environment of the natural world in which we are a part. Because those two things, they need to play a role in every decision that we make. I'm dedicated to expanding our green infrastructure, working with LOT to make sure that as climate change is happening, that we're scaling up that green infrastructure to be able to handle it. Of course, that also means our public transit and public transportation to be able to improve upon those systems are definitely going to help us make meaningful strides at meeting our goals. And I'm also really interested in accelerating the energy efficiency with which we are doing things here in Olympia. That could be like renewable energy adoption, adding solar panels to city-owned properties, figuring out ways that we can have our buildings more electrified, and it'll really help us to meet some of these goals.
Thank you. Our final question today. Olympia exists on the ancestral grounds of the Stachas people who continue to uphold traditional wisdoms and customs. How would you assess our engagement and involvement with regional indigenous tribal members? And finally, describe why this is an important issue.
Yeah, I think that our relationship, the city's relationship with our tribal partners right now, is very strong. And that said, it could always be stronger. I've been very fortunate in my career in the shellfish industry to have built and maintained a great working relationship with both the Squaxin Island tribe and the Nisqually tribe. And I think that the city has also done a great job at building these relationships. I'm always a proponent and advocate for early engagement and formal consultation. I think that whenever you have interested parties for policy that the City of Olympia is going to entertain, that it's worthwhile to pick up the phone and call our tribal partners and say, these are some things that we're working on. We'd really love and value your expertise and your opinion so that we can shape this policy in partnership, in collaboration. I think that's going to be essential for the Deschutes River Estuary Restoration Project, as well as a number of other things that we have coming down the line, because we are all working together on this. I think it's really important because having tribal perspective and tribal voices, having their knowledge and expertise at the table, it's essential because they've got so much experience around environmental stewardship and community well-being. And it would be in our best interest to really ask for that expertise and to learn from the wisdom that they have and can share with us.
Thank you. I too agree with what Justin said, that I think the city has a solid relationship. They've just entered into this agreement for the transfer of the old city hall, and that was a very that was a big deal. Renaming Priest Point Park Squaxin Park. I think there's a respectful atmosphere that I certainly want to uphold on the council and have strong relations with, especially with our local tribes, the Squaxin and the Nisquallies. I'm informed by this really from a lifetime. I grew up on adjacent to an Indian reservation in eastern Washington, and when I attended school K through 12, about half the kids were Native American, and that was a wonderful experience, having that ability to learn tribal ways and whatnot. But it was also a saddening experience for me in many ways, because I saw what a tough time those families had economically, and every social ill was within the bounds of the reservation, and there was it was at a time when there was a lot less caring than there is today, and so I think things are much better today, and the tribes have had what's important to many tribes is their sovereignty and their ability for self-determination. And so whatever we can do as policymakers to support that, I think is critical to come through on. I would just add, when I was the state Democratic Party chair for a decade in the state of Washington, and we had I won't go into which one, but we had a big campaign one year, and I decided to visit all 26 federally recognized tribes in the state at that time. I think the number's different now. And I did. I went and met with all 26 of the tribal councils or the tribal leadership across the state. This is important to me because of my experience growing up next to in Indian country. We also need to always remember that we are on formerly tribal lands, and so as Justin said, having input from the tribes on significant decisions is very important on those big questions to get the input from the tribes.
Thank you.
Is there anything else in closing that you'd like our audience to know about how you plan on making our community a better place? Oh,
yeah, we've talked a lot about homelessness, and we've talked a lot about, I've talked about how much I want to be a parks advocate, but I do want to talk a little bit more about affordability. And we've touched upon this. I believe that we do need to do this citywide assessment of all the properties that are available to determine if there are dormant properties that are publicly owned that would be appropriate for affordable housing. And then if we can identify some projects, we can start cobbling the money together, project by project, to make some things happen. I think there are other things we need to do for affordability. We need to maintain free public transit. That is such an amenity that's so important to this community that people, it's easy to, if you've lived here, it's easy to take it for granted, but most communities don't have this. And we need to encourage greater ridership on our city transit in order to protect that benefit. I believe we should establish 100 more pea patch gardens. It's a smaller item, but if we can do this, people will be able to. You can grow an incredible amount of food in a small pea patch garden, and people will be able to grow a little bit of food each summer to lighten the burden of their grocery bill. And if there are patches that are not being used, they can be used by nonprofit organizations to grow food for the food banks. These are just some of the ideas I have that I think it's really important that we need to make sure that Olympia can stay an affordable place.
I want to say thanks again for this amazing opportunity. I'm really grateful for the time that you all have taken today to sit down with us and get to know us a little bit better, and to share that, of course, with the voters here in Olympia. I certainly appreciate it greatly. Olympia has been my home for many years, and what I love about it is the way that people come together to solve challenges and celebrate what makes Olympia special. I believe that the City Council is strongest when it brings a wide range of voices and perspectives to any problem that it's trying to solve. And that kind of collaboration, for me, it builds trust to tackle issues with creativity and make sure that the city is working for everyone. The priorities that I'm focused on are the ones that are coming directly from the neighborhood doors I knock on and the businesses that I talk to. We need more housing choices and smart growth that respects Olympia's character. We should support small businesses, creating good local jobs and investing in lively commercial areas to keep our economy strong. And I also want to prioritize public safety and community well-being by making sure that we're using our resources wisely for safety, behavioral health, and the services that our neighborhoods need to succeed. I'll work for a really responsible, transparent city budget. It's not something we've talked about, but the city budget and the current state of financial affairs is definitely of paramount importance to me. And I want that budget to reflect the priorities of our community while still delivering high quality services. I'm running because I want to bring my energy and experience and collaboration to the council so that Olympia continues to be the city that I fell in love with, which is an amazing place for people to live, work, create, and to raise their families. So I thank you for your time. I thank the voters for their consideration, and of course, go Mariners.
Yeah.
That's right. Thank you both to Justin Stang and Paul Berendt for being here today. We really appreciate your time on this special Canada Forum edition of Lean In Olympia. And thanks so much to Sky Bear Media for hosting and producing this forum. To those of you watching, thanks for being with us today, and stay in touch through our website and social media. We appreciate the candidates for joining us. We'll be posting these videos soon, and have a great day.